Today, Barakat Odunuga-Bakare defeated Desmond Elliot, 11,385 votes to 270 across all wards in Surulere Constituency I. Everyone is calling this Barakat's victory. Nobody is asking why a three-term incumbent, a man who has held this seat since 2015, collapsed to 270 votes in his own constituency. The real number is not 11,385. The real number is one alleged signature on an impeachment notice in January 2025 that set off a chain reaction ending exactly here, today, at Paddington Mini Stadium. President Tinubu personally summoned his own chief of staff to his private study in Abuja and said, "I hear this Desmond Elliot is your boy, the one we gave to you." When the president of Nigeria is personally tracking a state assembly lawmaker through intelligence reports, the question you must ask is, what exactly did Desmond Elliot do that went all the way to Aso Rock? A man who has won 3 consecutive elections in Surulere just got 270 votes in his own party primary. His security was withdrawn by the state, his supporters were blocked at the gate, and the man who destroyed him publicly said, on camera, that Elliot almost cost him his job with the president. So, was this a primary election, or was this an execution? Before we go any further, if you're new here, Niger Insider Report exists for one reason: to bring you the political stories that mainstream Nigerian media buries, waters down, or simply won't touch. Hit subscribe right now and stay with me, because what I'm about to show you in the next 30 minutes changes how you see everything that is happening in this country. On Wednesday, 20 May 2026, Desmond Elliot officially withdrew from the APC primary election for Surulere Constituency I at Paddington Mini Stadium on Western Avenue, Lagos, stating, "In all zones, they have been intimidating and stopping us. I want to officially announce my withdrawal from this particular race." His withdrawal came at the moment his opponent, Barakat Odunuga-Bakare, backed by Chief of Staff Femi Gbajabiamila, was already leading in the ongoing count. Elliot alleged that his security aides were withdrawn and that local government workers loyal to his camp were removed from their positions. The timing is surgical. APC state primaries are being conducted now ahead of 2027 general elections. This is the exact window when political godfathers settle scores and when loyalty is tested against ambition. The trigger event is not today. Members of the Lagos State House of Assembly unanimously removed Speaker Mudashiru Obasa in January 2025 while he was out of the country, citing allegations of gross misconduct and abuse of office. That vote and who signed it is where this story actually begins. Everyone assumed this was a gender story, the Lagos APC promoting a woman over a male incumbent. That narrative was even offered publicly. The decision was said to be part of attempts to boost women and gender inclusion in politics. But here is what nobody is telling you yet, and it starts with a private meeting inside the president's house in Abuja and a file of DSS intelligence reports with Desmond Elliot's name on them. The Lagos State House of Assembly, the APC Lagos structure, the presidency via the Office of the Chief of Staff, the DSS, and the Surulere local government structure all activated against one sitting lawmaker. Obasa was impeached by a majority of lawmakers over allegations of gross misconduct and abuse of office. Following his removal, Deputy Speaker Mojisola Meranda was sworn in as Speaker, becoming the first woman to hold the position in Lagos State. However, her tenure lasted only 49 days. Upon returning to Nigeria, Obasa challenged his impeachment in court and was eventually reinstated after the intervention of Tinubu and party leaders. A court later annulled his removal. Under the Nigerian constitution, the removal of a state assembly speaker requires a 2/3 majority vote, meaning at least some lawmakers had to sign. The legal ambiguity, signing is documented, but who coordinated it and whether it constituted gross misconduct by the signatories is entirely unaddressed in law. That gray area is where Desmond Elliot's political fate was decided, not in court but in Aso Rock. 3 days after Gbajabiamila warned Elliot to distance himself from the impeachment plot, the Director General of the DSS contacted Gbajabiamila directly. The security services were now monitoring the fallout at the State Assembly level. When the DSS calls the Chief of Staff about a Lagos Assembly member, something beyond party politics is operating. Precedent: the same playbook, intelligence pressure, withdrawal of state protection, Godfather realignment, was used against Bola Tinubu's perceived enemies inside Lagos APC going back to the 2000s. This is a known Lagos power template, not an improvisation. Hold that thought, because in a few minutes, I will show you exactly who has been positioned to inherit Elliot's seat, what her institutional background is, and what that choice tells you about the direction of power in Lagos APC ahead of 2027. The answer is not what you think. Barakat Odunuga-Bakare is a former special advisor on housing to Governor Babajide Sanwo-Olu. She is not a grassroots politician who rose from the wards. She is a Lagos government insider. Her victory does not represent party democracy, it represents the Lagos executive structure asserting control over the legislature. Desmond Elliot, a man who entered politics under Gbajabiamila's explicit sponsorship in 2015. Gbajabiamila openly disclosed at a stakeholders meeting in Surulere that he nearly lost his job as Chief of Staff because of Elliot's alleged involvement in the impeachment saga involving Speaker Obasa. That public disclosure was politically devastating. When your godfather publicly says you almost destroyed his career, your political life in that structure is over. The Lagos State Assembly speakership is not ceremonial. It controls the budget scrutiny process for a state with an annual budget exceeding 2.2 trillion naira. Obasa's removal and reinstatement was fundamentally about who controls that legislative chokehold. Elliot, by allegedly backing the anti-Obasa faction, was choosing a side in a 2 trillion naira power struggle. Tinubu's 2027 Lagos re-election machine requires absolute legislative loyalty in the Lagos Assembly. Any lawmaker seen as unpredictable, or worse, one whose name reached the president's private study via DSS, becomes a liability. Elliot was not removed because he was weak, he was removed because he was unpredictable. Gbajabiamila told the meeting, "Mr. President called me to his study in his house in Abuja during the Obasa saga. He said, 'I hear this Desmond Elliot is your boy, the one we gave to you.' When Tinubu says the one we gave to you, that is not a president speaking about a lawmaker. That is a political godfather reclaiming a political asset he believes was misused."
I know what some of you are thinking, that Elliot simply lost a primary to a stronger candidate. But look at what happened with Chris Ngige in Anambra in 2003, what happened with Ayo Fayose in Ekiti in 2006, and what happened with Rotimi Amechi in Rivers in 2007. The same pattern: intelligence reports, godfather withdrawal of support, security apparatus deployed against an incumbent. This is not coincidence. In Nigerian politics, this is a playbook, and Elliot just became the latest chapter. Right, pause here for 1 second. If what I've just broken down is new information for you, drop a comment below and tell me, did you know any of this before today? Barakat Odunuga-Bakare is now widely regarded as the leading contender to clinch the APC ticket for Surulere Constituency I ahead of the 2027 general elections. A former housing advisor replacing a 3-term assembly member means the Lagos executive branch has just extended its direct influence into the Surulere legislative seat. That is not representation, that is a placement. For a sitting lawmaker to be removed from a primary using DSS intelligence files and withdrawal of state security not by voters but by a chain of pressure from Asorok, then the principle of separation of powers at state level is functionally dead. What happened in Surulere today is a stress test of Nigerian legislative independence, and the legislature failed. For someone in Surulere who has voted for Desmond Elliot since 2015, today's primary offered 11,385 votes for Barakat and 270 for the incumbent. Either 11,385 APC members genuinely abandoned their sitting rep in a single day, or the delegate process was managed. Either answer is disturbing for every Nigerian who believes their party primary means something. Political analysts say the defeat signals changing political alliances and shifting power dynamics within the Lagos APC, especially in Surulere. What it signals more broadly is that Tinubu's 2027 operation will not tolerate any Lagos legislative figure who cannot be guaranteed loyal, and that the method of enforcement is no longer public. It is now public, deliberate, and meant to be seen. And this is where it gets international, because the question of whether Nigerian legislative elections are genuinely competitive is now being watched by international democracy monitors and diaspora Nigerians who are deciding to invest in, return to, or advocate for this country. Here is why that external gaze matters. In the UK Foreign Office, US State Department, and EU observer missions have all flagged APC primary processes in Nigerian democracy reports. A primary where journalists were expelled from the venue, security was withdrawn from an incumbent, and a 42-to-1 vote margin was recorded within a single party will not go unnoticed in those annual reports. For Nigerians in London, Houston, New York, and Toronto watching this, many of whom left Nigeria specifically because of governance failures, the Surulere primary is a specific data point. If party primaries can be managed this openly, general elections are subject to the same mechanics. That calculation affects remittance patterns, return migration decisions, and diaspora investment in real estate and businesses in Lagos. In Zimbabwe in 2000, in Uganda in 2016, and in Belarus in 2020, the same sequence occurred. Intelligence services deployed against internal opposition, incumbents removed not by voters but by controlled party processes, and the replacement candidates announced as proof of party democracy. Nigeria is not Zimbabwe, but it is not immune to the same institutional drift. In Kenya in 2017, the Independent Electoral and Borders Commission annulled a presidential result under Supreme Court order. What made that possible was not the courts alone, it was civil society, diaspora pressure, and international monitors acting together. Nigeria has all three of those assets. The question is whether they will be mobilized at the primary stage where the real candidate selection now happens, or only at the general election stage when it is already too late.
Desmond Elliot had 3 terms, 11 years, and produced limited visible constituency development in Surulere. Some constituents argue Barakat is genuinely preferred, and that Gbajabiamila's support reflects legitimate party evolution, not a purge. That argument deserves to be heard fairly. Supporters of Elliot were stopped from voting. APC officials and security agents threw out journalists covering the primary at Akinhami Call Ward. If Barakat had 11,385 genuine votes, there was no need to block journalists from a public primary. Legitimacy does not require darkness. The optics of suppression undermine the claim of organic grassroots support. Elliot quit because he knew he would lose. He withdrew during the vote, alleging active suppression. His supporters were physically blocked from the venue. Withdrawal under those conditions is not concession, it is protest. Gbajabiamila is just supporting gender inclusion. Gbajabiamila publicly said he nearly lost his job because of Elliot. Personal political survival, not gender policy, drove this decision. This is just Lagos APC internal affairs. When the DSS, the Chief of Staff, and the Presidency are involved in a state assembly primary, it is a national governance question, not a local party matter. The Hook asked, what did Desmond Elliot do that reached Asorok? The answer, he allegedly signed his name to an impeachment that Tinubu personally opposed, in a state legislature that Tinubu personally controls, in a constituency where Tinubu's Chief of Staff is the godfather. That is not a mistake. That is a political death sentence in the Lagos system. The facts point in one direction. This was not a primary election in the conventional sense. It was a political accountability exercise inside a party structure, using state instruments, security withdrawal, delegate management, venue control to produce a predetermined outcome. That is the documented sequence of events. What we do not yet know whether Elliot will accept this outcome, whether other implicated Obasa impeachment signatories will face the same treatment, and whether Barakat Odunuga-Bakare will govern Surulere with genuine independence or as an extension of the executive she served as special advisor. When those answers become clear, we will be back. I want to hear from you, especially if you are from Surulere, if you were at the venue today, or if you think I have missed something in this analysis. That conversation matters. If this analysis gave you something the evening news couldn't, share it with one Nigerian who needs to understand what is really happening in this country.